She stood at the altar, her fingers trembling around a bouquet that suddenly felt too heavy to hold. Tears blurred the white arch in front of her, and the lace on her sleeves was damp and cold against her skin. This was supposed to be the happiest day of her life. Instead, her heart was breaking in front of everyone she had ever loved. The groom, Daniel, had not shown up. There was no text, no call, just a devastating silence that filled the grand church. The priest shifted awkwardly, his words of comfort lost in the air. Guests avoided her eyes, their pity a physical weight pressing down on her. Her mother sat frozen in the front pew, hands clasped so tightly her knuckles were white, as if faith alone could undo this humiliation. Alina had imagined this moment since she was a little girl, but never like this. It's not with the room thick with whispers instead of joy. Daniel had seemed perfect once. He had a way with words, painting beautiful pictures of their future together. But over time, his love became conditional. He wanted more control, more obedience, more silence when it mattered most. The night before the wedding, they had their first real fight. It was about money. He wanted her to quit her modest teaching job, to depend entirely on him. She had refused. He'd walked out angry. Lena thought he just needed to cool down. She believed love meant being patient, giving him space.
Oh.
She was wrong. Now, standing alone, she felt smaller than she ever had. She leaned toward the priest and whispered that she wanted to end the ceremony. Her voice cracked on the last word, and the sound of her own brokenness echoed in her ears. And that's when it happened. The heavy church doors creaked open. The sound cut through the hushed room like a blade. Every head turned. Every breath stopped. A man stood silhouetted against the bright doorway. He didn't rush. He wore a simple dark suit, no tie, and his presence commanded attention without any effort at all. His hair was slightly graying at the temples, and his eyes were calm, observant, taking in the scene. A ripple of recognition went through the crowd. This was Victor Hala, self-made millionaire, a quiet philanthropist, and one of the most private, respected men in the city. But Victor hadn't come for a wedding. He'd come to keep a promise. 10 years earlier, Alina was a struggling college student, working late nights at a small diner to pay her tuition. Victor, newly widowed and drowning in grief, would come in every Thursday right at closing time. He never spoke much, always sitting alone in the corner booth, a ghost haunting the edges of the room. One night, Alina noticed his hands shaking and the distant, vacant stare in his eyes. She did something small, but incredibly brave. She brought him a cup of tea on the house and said, "You don't have to talk. Just know you're not invisible here." That small act of kindness broke through the wall of his grief. For the first time since his wife had passed, Victor cried. They talked after that many times. They spoke of loss, of fear, and of the terrifying prospect of starting over when life shatters you without asking permission. When Alina finally graduated, Victor gave her a simple card. Inside a single sentence was written, "If you ever need someone to stand up for you, call me." Years passed. They lost touch. Life moved on. Until that very morning, when Victor received a message from an unknown number. It contained just 3 words, "I need you." Now, he stood in the church aisle, his eyes locked on Elena's tear-streaked face. He started walking toward her, ignoring the stunned silence and the gaping mouths of the guests. He stopped just a few steps away, his voice gentle but loud enough for everyone to hear. "You deserve respect," he said. "You deserve to be chosen, not abandoned." He then turned to the priest. "If she's willing, I will marry her today." Gasps echoed through the pews. Elena's heart hammered against her ribs. She stared at Victor, disbelief warring with a flicker of hope. "Victor, you don't have to do this," she whispered, her voice trembling. "People will think." "I know exactly what they'll think," he said softly, his gaze never leaving hers. "And I know the truth. This isn't pity. This is a choice." At that moment, Elena's mother stood up, tears of relief streaming down her face. And for the first time all day, Elena felt something other than shame. She felt seen. The priest, recovering from his shock, hesitated, then turned to her. He asked if this was truly her wish. Elena looked around the room at the shattered expectations, the judgment, the whispers, and then she looked back at Victor. In his eyes there was no pressure, no demand, only unwavering respect. Taking a deep breath, she found her voice. "Yes," she said, clear and steady. "I choose this." The ceremony continued, slowly, imperfectly. Elena's hands still shook, but Victor held them, his grip firm and steady. When they exchanged vows, he didn't promise her a perfect life. He promised partnership. He promised loyalty, not a rescue but an alliance. When the priest finally pronounced them husband and wife, the applause was hesitant at first, a few scattered claps, but then it grew into an overwhelming wave of support. In the days that followed, the world exploded with speculation. Headlines screamed about the scandal, friends questioned their motives. Daniel tried to call, to explain, to apologize, his voicemails filled with frantic excuses. Elena never answered. For the first time in her life, she felt no need to justify her worth to anyone. Marrying Victor didn't magically solve everything. It wasn't a fairy tale ending, it was a real beginning. Elena wrestled with insecurity, with the fear that she was just living in the shadow of this powerful man. And Victor had his own struggles, learning to open his heart again after years of self-imposed isolation. They argued, they stumbled, but they learned, and most importantly, they grew. Victor didn't try to change her, encouraged her to keep her teaching job, to build her own identity, to be her own person. And Elena, in turn, reminded him that love isn't something you can control or command, it's something you nurture and protect. Months later, Elena stood in front of her classroom, a genuine smile on her face as she taught her students about courage. It's not the loud, flashy kind you see in movies, but the quiet, steady kind that shows up when you least expect it. From a place you never thought to look. On their first anniversary, Victor asked her if she ever regretted that chaotic, unbelievable day. Elena looked at him, her husband, her partner, and then at the simple, honest life they had built together. "No," she said, her voice filled with a certainty she had never known before. "Because that day taught me something. Being chosen isn't about money or status. It's about someone seeing you at your most broken and saying, you don't have to face this alone. Sometimes life breaks you in public. Sometimes your worst moment becomes the doorway to your best chapter. Sometimes when you think you've been abandoned at the altar, the right person walks in. Not to save you, but to stand beside you and remind you of just how much you are worth." Thank you for watching. If this story moved you, please like, share, and subscribe for more content that celebrates the strength of the human spirit. We'll see you in the next video.